And we're live. Is this it, Matt? Are we officially live and on the air? Is that how this works?
Absolutely. It says we're officially recording, so this is all good.
Wow. Okay, so then we should let everybody know what they're listening to then, right?
It's a good idea.
So
Otherwise they would
welcome.
think, what are we joined for? What's the purpose of this?
Who are these guys or what are they talking about? And why do I care so much about banking all of a sudden? That's what they would be saying, Matt.
Absolutely.
So this is the first annual inaugural episode of Banking Bytes, brought to you by Endava, Fred Fuller, and Matt Williamson. Matt, I guess we should start with an overview of who we are and what the show will be about. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so hey, I am Matt Williamson. I am Senior Vice President and Industry Principal here at Endava. What that really means is a very long title is I'm in charge of global banking and payments as a whole, and I've got quite an eclectic role. So part of that is advisory, so advising our key customers on market trends, what's happening. We have a subsidiary of that where I actually do a lot of work in the private equity and venture capitalist space as well on when they're looking at companies they should buy, combine, join. Again, banking, payments. Should we do this? What's the market fit? Forward horizons, that kind of thing. But I even have randomly done things for our customers where they've asked me to help them hire into their C-suite. So I vetted CTOs, COOs, that kind of thing, tested their knowledge, metal, etc., which is quite amusing. So hence my role is very, very eclectic. But fundamentally, I support our growth plans through sales globally. And I think that's the purpose you'll see of this podcast. It's not a UK or US focused. We in Endava have a global reach, and this podcast is deemed to cover the globe for banking.
Very well said, and I love you're the eloquence with which you transition and provide the material there was so gracefully done, and I hope that you don't expect the same from me. That's what I want to set the right standards here. Yeah, okay, and we're off. Yeah. So Fred Fuller, I am the global head of banking and capital markets sales for banking and capital markets here at Endava. Been in the banking and payment space for 15 plus years. I'm a little bit of an anomaly in that I started my corporate career in accounting and finance. So I started in the back office and then decided that the fun part was customer facing and getting out and driving the business. So was fortunate enough to make that transition. Started my career post high school, enlisted in the military, went and played around in this little thing called buds, tore up different body parts, didn't complete that training, and then ended up leveraging that experience and the GI Bill to get a degree in stats. So a little bit of that's my journey, right? And there's more there, but we'll save it for additional episodes. So, Matt, do you want to talk a little bit then about what are we going to be talking about? Why do people want to tune into Banking Bytes?
Okay. So part of what we're doing here is we'll run themes. So we'll try and make this less random and have, linear nature of discussion points. But this season is around core modernization. So I actually got written down behind this screen so I wouldn't forget what that actually means. So we're going to cover customer centricity, innovative technologies, digital strategies, the power of partnerships, which is a really important and key one here at Endava, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. Cloud, obviously, it's become, I'm trying to think of the right word, it's become ubiquitous now. There are only a few regions around the world that are anti-cloud, but even then, they are experimenting with it, and there'll be one key provider who's working with the regulator to start a cloud journey for that region so they're not left behind. Disruptive technologies, which could cover all sorts. Cloud is one, obviously that's a given. AI, that's going to come up a lot, I think, and what that means for the customers and our clients. Cybersecurity and cybersecurity threats, that's ongoing and ever evolving, and that will never change. I think we've seen numerous issues over the last 6 months across various industries where they've had critical threats and breaches that have impacted themselves, and more importantly and more concerningly, the public and their customers, which obviously has reputational risk and is very hard to overcome. And then finally, which fits into that as well, is changing regulations. I mean, we are not a regulatory advisory organization per se. We obviously review the regulations, and we help impart to our customers what that could mean for them and where they should look to leverage technology and other opportunities coming up to make the most from their perspective. I mean, if I give an example, I didn't really reference it earlier. I was in a technical role at a large tier one global bank. And some of the conversations we used to have around regulation was, what's the fine cost versus what's the fixed cost? Now, I've stepped away from that, that world for some time now. So people have changed, strategies have changed, cultures have changed. But that was often a valid perspective. There is a limited budget. If the fix is 30, 40 times more fine, you can kind of see why people looked at it and say, well, we'll take the fine if and when it happens. It's morally, ethically not necessarily correct, but you can have some level of understanding as to why people would consider that a sensible course of action. They're the core themes. There will be a second season later in 2025. Fred and I will be back and forth. He's American. He can't help it. We do the best we can. I'm based in the UK and has his own issues. We should probably say I'm based out of London, our London office, but I spend a lot of time traveling around the world with our customers. Fred, I'm going to hand back to you and see what you want to unpack with that.
Yeah. I want to focus on that last little bit so very much. Yeah, I am an American, and I apologize. I don't know what I'm supposed to say there. We're going to have a lot of fun with this, that's for sure. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and so as we begin to banter back and forth, and as we get into emotional subjects, you'll hear my Southern drawl start to rise to the surface, and then you can really make fun of me. The topics that you mentioned, the list that you went through, any single one of those could be a podcast topic unto itself in perpetuity, right? So what we want to do on this podcast is we want to get beyond the surface and provide information that you are not the same stuff that you're going to pick up at a conference, right? Not the same stuff that you're going to pick up in a kind of a random white paper. And the way that we're going to get there is by interaction with the listeners, interaction with the audience. And so we need the audience to reach out to us, to email us, to interact with us and tell them what is trending for them, right? As we get into these topics, we don't have this set agenda where we're going to sit up here and do the robotic thing and go through because this is on the script and we have to cover this to get to that. I just want to focus on the things that people really want to talk about. I want to focus on, it's no different than the banks and the payments companies and all the organizations that we support, right? Always comes back to the customer. What does the customer want? Then that's what you do. And so with your feedback, we can be far more dialed in to talking about the things that matter most. So please reach out to us. Matt is clearly our subject matter expert. He will provide all of the wonderful, meaningful material. I will help to facilitate these conversations. And then we're going to bring in guests as well. Matt, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the purpose of that is we are pulling together a guest list, or we have a guest list of various industry leaders around the world that will fit into the themes that we're going to talk about. But what I would add as well, as we want this to be an interactive podcast so that people feel engaged, is if there are topics that we are covering that you feel we need to dive in more deeply into, which is fine, or other topics at all, or just importantly, if you want to suggest guests who you think would add real value and you'd like to dive in deep with them, please, reach out to us. I think we'll set up we can comment on the various delivery channels, but I think we'll probably set up an email group as well for banking bytes at endava.com so people can just make it as easy as possible. And also, as you say, send in that feedback. I mean, if you think about what's going on around the world with banking, this covers banking and payments. But one of the key industry pieces at the moment is ISO 222. If you park AI for a moment, generative AI, that's the other subject, predominantly. It touches every part of a bank, whether it's capital markets, trade, treasury. If there's no payment going in or payment going out, all of these functions cease to exist. What we're seeing, and I found this fascinating, I was doing some more research on this recently, because we get asked, can you do ISO 222 for us? Customers come in, inbound inquiries. And the question is, what do you mean when you say that? When you're asking the question, what is it you're looking to solve? Because often people feel it's a piece of software or there's some quick fix. And actually, as we know, it's a methodology. Now, what's really interesting in this is, as always with new technology or new requirements, regulations, there are early adopters and there are laggards, if we're going to be unfair. So I'll give you an example. So Singaporean bank DBS are way ahead of most of the world, frankly, and 88% of their SWIFT transactions are running through ISO 222 format, which is fantastic. That's pretty impressive, right? But if you look at the global statistics for banking as a whole, in August last year, and I just need to check this. Yep, there we go. October last year, it's only 20% of banks were ready globally. Bear that in mind. Now, if you just follow on to August 24th this year, 26.4% of banks were ready, global banks. So there's only been an increase in that short time frame of 6%. Now, bear in mind, it's a year from now, this is mandatory. I think there's a long way to go for a lot of people. And I think people are still looking for that quick fix. And we're helping customers understand what is it they need to do to, one, be compliant, which is the first question, and two, but what are the advantages of adoption and what can you net gain from that? So it's suddenly not just a regulatory or a compliance requirement. It's actually something you can leverage to generate revenue growth, protection, better services to your customers, etc. I've done a lot of talking there, Fred. I'm going to take a pause and a breath and let you jump in.
What I enjoy about the position that we're both in is the global view, right? It is being able to understand what is happening in APAC, how that is influencing what is taking place in Europe, watching the way that will then circle the globe and influence the U.S. It's not. I was at a conference this week, the Clearinghouse Conference, which was an incredible conference, and they were talking about that a little bit, right? What the customers need in the U.S. and what they demand today is different than what the customers in Mexico demand versus the customers in Brazil. And it's all based on how that economy works today and then where do you want to go? Having that global view of how these things are going to flow around and seeing that when it comes to real-time payments, there's person-to-person cross-border payments are starting to take place now in all these various markets. It is the future of money movement, right? And everybody's waiting for the use cases to develop. The use case is what the customer wants. As any industry tries to understand and predict what the customer wants, they will eventually tell you whether you got it right or not, right? And so it's just it's watching the chicken and the egg in the market and what's happening in one part of the world and how it influences the next part of the world. So you're talking about ISO and SWIFT, right? And the adoption of that and who's doing what. Excuse me. When you have a Singapore leading the charge, right, as they're known to do, I mean, they move forward. So I love being able to have these conversations around the globe and talk about it from that perspective. We understand our markets better because we're here and we live it and breathe it every day, but the focus will absolutely be global. And how these items that we have on this list, the items that you went through, how they really influence each other. And connect the dots throughout this sort of overarching theme of modernization and where the market's going. I'll tell you one of the favorite things that I hear in the market, and I think I have this conversation weekly, which is to sit down with a client or a prospect and talk about any topic, right? Cloud, modernization, core modernization, payment, take any of these topics. And they start with, look, I know we're way behind the market. And I always kind of laugh with that one because I'm like, well, tell me where you are, and then we'll see if you're behind the market. And the market is, in many ways, it's not as far along as you think it is. But I would also say it's not as far along as it should be.
I think that's
right.
That's
in terms of
that is really a fair assessment. Yeah. I'd agree with that. We're obviously often in some of the same meetings, often in other meetings as well. It's often a thematic. and also we can't keep up, which is fair based, if you versus a fintech or a neobank versus a traditional provider. I'm not saying that with a slant on it or being unfair, because, a traditional banking provider has a history and has a lot of regulatory oversight that they have to operate within. Whereas, the fintechs, neobanks that came in just started doing things and waited until someone told them they couldn't do it. And they're just two different operating models. So you've got to be fair. But you're right on the customer centricity piece. The challenge that you have with a fintech versus traditional bank is they can just try stuff. And if it doesn't work, I'm being slightly facetious when I say it's a few lines of code, you junk it onto the next thing. Whereas for a large bank, a lot of time and effort has gone in just to start the project. If it's going to be canned because the customer doesn't like it, there's often a bit of fallout internally. Digital culture is a completely different thing. And a digital first culture is a completely different thing. So a lot of the time when we're having conversations with AI, I'll throw it in there, it didn't take too long, where people are seeing AI as a potential fix-all for everything, not really understanding, the basic challenges are still the same. It is, do you have good data? Do you understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve? Do you have a solid foundation with which to build upon? If you don't have those, it doesn't matter what you throw in on top of it, you're going to come into a world of pain and challenge and different problems. But again, we do understand, and that's part of our role. And we're always learning. I think that's the other thing I would add in. I would never want anyone listening to think that we have the answers to everything all the time, and that's it. We are constantly learning, fact checking, what's opinion versus what's reality, where could the future go? And that's kind of part of the thought leadership pieces. You're looking at component pieces, not necessarily understanding the linear journey, but seeing this is the direction it could go in or likely will go in. And then we can map back from there on how to compose that into an achievable roadmap, whether it's technology, product vision, whatever it is. But a big part of that is constantly going out to the market, leveraging our footprint, meeting with customers, prospective customers, and then telling us what's going well, what's not going well. And the point you made where every meeting you have, we don't think we're as far along as we should be. Well, we can help you understand that actually you're about where everyone else is. So it doesn't mean you should take the foot off the gas. It just means actually table stakes are where they are. If you do these 3 or 4 key things, that could propel you ahead of your competition.
And let me understand where you are, right? Do you understand where you are in the journey? And you think you do, but like getting a different view is powerful. It's very, very impactful. And that's, some of the value. But Matt, I want to go back to something you said a second ago and I think make a slight correction. A moment ago, it sounded like you said you were wrong sometimes. Did you? You
Well, my wife tells me I'm wrong quite a lot, in fairness. I think
That's it.
I think the reality is you have to have a level of humility, right? Where the information you have and the things you're working on can lead you to a certain point. But and it's shown classically throughout history and business, if you aren't able to take more information that gives you a different perspective or a different opinion that enables you to evolve your plan, then you'll fail. It's funny, it's in
You'll miss.
Apple traditionally. You'll miss something. You can't, just because you have a current position doesn't mean that position can't change. And if you are someone who organization or individual who sticks to that position, it is going to hinder you long term.
Yeah. Best case scenario, you miss something. Worst case scenario, you put the whole thing in the ditch, right? This stuff evolves so quickly. I was listening to a panel about quantum computing and AI. And the quantum computing guys used words that really, really induced a migraine for me. That what they're talking about there is on such a different level. And it's one of those things that what these guys said, and I've not done a lot of homework on it, so I could be totally wrong or misrepresenting. But they said, we're 10 years away from this being like a real serious thing in the market. There's still a lot of the technology that's evolving and kind of being worked through. But when that hits, then what happens? And this, when you talk, Matt, about, making sure that your data is ready, everybody's in a different state of readiness. but it doesn't mean, that state of readiness doesn't dictate whether or not you move forward. It dictates maybe how you move forward, right? It dictates the prioritization of the work and the things you need to do. But that's not well, then let's not do it. If you're saying those things as an organization right now, I don't know how you're going to compete in 10 years' time.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, just to call it out, we're just past the 20-minute mark, so we'll wrap up shortly. But just to call it out, as an organization, we started off in engineering services. That's what we were exemplary at, building things for other people, but based on what they wanted. What's actually happened, and it was customer feedback that led us to evolve as an organization. Exactly, not intentionally, but on this discussion was, you're building this stuff, you're doing it for other people, you're a global company, you must see other things. You must be able to replay to us feedback of what's good, what's bad, what we should be thinking about. Your value add, your day-to-day engineering services are amazing and exemplary, and we're really happy with them, but you could give us more, surely. And that's where this pivot has come in for us as an organization to look at that. You'll see other podcasts from other divisions. It's based on customer feedback, and then us taking that and running with it, and then maintaining an understanding and giving them an informed decision on the direction of travel. Some of our customers we have conversations with where it's actually you're better off leveraging third-party software than building it yourself. That's a reality, and it would be great for us to build it for you, but as a good provider to you, that's not the right option for your business and your business model. But we can help you identify the best players in the market and integrate them so you are successful.
I could give you a reference today for a client where we did that very thing, the vendor selection. We narrowed it down to 3. 2 of them were going to result in some implementation work, right? And for us to help. The third did not. The third was the one they should have gone with. The third is the one we recommended, and it's the one that they went with. And we were incredible. Like, that was the decision for the client, right? It wasn't the best decision for us financially, but there's only one decision you make as you decide what kind of organization you want to be and who you want to be out in the market. And so when you want to work with clients and build trust, then you have to do the right thing every time. And that's who we are and what we're made of. And then, Matt, you mentioned a moment ago other podcasts that Endava does. This one, though, hands down, the best.
We'll
right? I mean, come on.
Around that and see how they.
Well, okay, so download, like, subscribe, whatever it is that you do for these things. We've got a competition underway, and you'll enjoy this one so much more because you have Fred and Matt.
Absolutely. So on that note, Fred, any final observations or passing notes before we wrap up?
No, listen in. We want to have fun. We want to be conversational. We want to provide value and meaningful content. We want to hear from you. So please give us a listen, give us feedback, and hopefully this is a place where you can come and pass a few minutes and have a little levity, but then also pick up some really useful, critical information for the things that are important for you. I think, Matt, you have any closing words?
Yeah, I'm going to also call to action. Good old-fashioned sales talk from your side of the world. I did some research just before we recorded this, and I used Gen AI, ChatGPT, and I validated the sources. I will add as well. What are the top 5 things that global banks are focused on at the moment? I will caveat this. The reference material was from the likes of Deloitte, Accenture, Wall Street Journal, and a couple of others. What I want to understand is people who actually listen to this to the end. Do you agree? What would your prioritization be? So the top 5 are adoption of generative AI, strengthening financial crime prevention, digital transformation and customer experience, regulatory risk management and compliance, and then ESG initiatives.
I know exactly what I would do with those, but I'm not going to say because I would rather I don't want to taint the view, right? So have our listeners respond and let us know. I guess we got to find an email address, though. We're telling it, reach out to us and get in touch with us. And do you know what it is?
I'll get the guys to set up a banking Bytes at endava.com, but also this will be published out on LinkedIn and other social channels. So we'll include ability to comment, subscribe, like, as you said as well, but also we'll put this out as a stack rank or a voting poll. So that'll feed in and we'll open the next podcast with those results.
Outstanding. So I think that's a wrap for the first episode, the inaugural episode of Banking Bytes. For the eloquent and ever so intelligent Matt Williamson, I'm Fred Fuller, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Speak soon.